To begin filming, if you are live streaming, it would be good to angle so that you can also get the interpreter into the shot, so that deaf people who are watching the live stream or want to see this later will be able to see what's going on.
Just another quick announcement over there. You'll see a Chantal bus. If anybody needs to go in and get warm for a few minutes, you're more than welcome to go to the bus. And again, welcome to the 49th National Day of Mourning. Yeah. Give yourselves a round of applause because you're moving. You're generating some heat. And if my hands don't freeze up, here we go. And once again, on the fourth Thursday in November, United American Indians of New England and those who support us are gathered on this hill to observe a National Day of Mourning. Today marks the 49th time that we have come here. Yeah, in all kinds of weather. To mourn our ancestors and speak the truth about our history. Those who started National Day of Mourning could not have envisioned that generations would still be here, year after year, carrying on this tradition. And many of the elders who stood on this hill and organized that first day of mourning are no longer with us, but we feel their spirits guiding us today. 49 Thanksgivings ago, my father, an Aquino Wampanoag named Wamsuta Frank James, was invited to address a gathering celebrating the 350th anniversary of the arrival of the Pilgrims. And when asked by the organizers to provide an advance copy of the speech he planned to deliver, Wamsuta agreed. When they saw the speech, the planners told him he could not speak only if he were willing to offer false praise of the Pilgrims. The organizers were even willing to write a speech for him. After all, they said, and I quote, "The theme of the celebration is brotherhood, and anything inflammatory would be out of place." He refused to have words put in his mouth. And National Day of Mourning came into being as a result of that refusal. And instead of speaking at the banquet, he and a group of indigenous peoples and allies from throughout the Americas gathered here on this hill and observed the first National Day of Mourning in 1970. Now, what really happened on that first Thanksgiving, or what some of us call the first Thanks-taking? According to popular myth, the Pilgrims, seeking religious freedom, landed on Plymouth Rock. The Indians welcomed them with open arms and then promptly faded into the background, and everyone lived happily ever after. The end. But here's the truth. First, the Pilgrims are glorified and mythologized because the circumstances of the first colony in North America, Jamestown, was frankly too ugly to hold up as an effective national myth. We can't teach school children about cannibalism or have them dress up as starving people in class plays. Pilgrims and Indians are much more marketable today. Second, the Pilgrims came here as part of a commercial venture. They didn't need religious freedom. They already had that back in Holland or the Netherlands. The Mayflower Compact was merely a group of white men who wanted to ensure they could get a return on their investment. When they arrived on Outer Cape Cod, by the way, not on that pebble down the hill, one of the first things the Pilgrims did was to rob Wampanoag graves at Cornhill and steal as much of their winter provisions of corn and beans as they were able to carry. The writings of the colonists themselves describe these actions taking place. The next part of the mythology is true. My Wampanoag ancestors did welcome the Pilgrims, little knowing that they and other indigenous peoples would be dispossessed and killed by their guns and hanging rope, as well as their diseases. And what did we get in return for all this kindness? Genocide, the theft of our lands, and never-ending repression. The first official Thanksgiving did not take place in 1621, when the Pilgrims had a harvest time meal provided largely by the Wampanoag. Instead, it was officially proclaimed by Governor Winthrop of the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1637 to celebrate the massacre of over 700 Pequot men, women, and children on the banks of the Mystic River in Connecticut. Governor Winthrop wrote of this event, "Those that escaped the fire were slain with the sword, some hewed to pieces, others run through with their rapiers. Thus destroyed about 400 at this time. It was a fearful sight to see them frying in the fire. Horrible was the stink and scent thereof, but the victory seemed a sweet sacrifice, and they gave the prayers thereof to God, who had wrought so wonderfully for them." And for the next 100 years, every Thanksgiving Day ordained by a governor will be in honor of the bloody victory, thanking God that the battle had been won. And yet the history books call us savages. So why does any of this matter? When people perpetrate the myth of Thanksgiving, they are not erasing our genocide, but also celebrating it. For my ancestors, the Pilgrims' arrival marked the beginning of the end. Those of us who managed to survive this genocide are treated as quaint relics of the past, forever relegated to this one point in history. But we did not simply fade into the background, as the Thanksgiving myth says. We have survived, thrived, and we have persevered. Yeah. The very fact that you are here is proof that we did not vanish. The fact that other people, having seen through the Pilgrim myth, join us every year in the struggle to destroy that mythology is proof that we did not simply vanish. In our very presence, frees this land from the lies of the history books and the myth makers. We will remember and honor all of our ancestors in the struggle who went before us. We will speak truth to power as we have been doing so since the first day of mourning in 1970. Yeah. That first day of mourning was a powerful demonstration of Native unity. Today is a powerful demonstration of not only Indigenous unity, but the unity of all people who want to speak truth to power. People who want the truth to be told and want to see an end to the oppressive system brought to these shores by the Pilgrim invaders. And sadly, the conditions which prevailed in Indian country in 1970 still prevail today. In 1970, we demanded the end of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and it is still a demand today. Native nations should not need federal oversight to govern ourselves or take control of our own lands. Recently, the Department of the Interior ruled that the Mashpee Wampanoag should not be able to take their own ancestral territory into trust. In other words, the Mashpee are threatened with having their own land ripped away from them for a second time. This decision represents an attack on self-determination and sovereignty of all Native nations throughout the country, especially those who are federally recognized after 1934. I hope you will stand with Mashpee and support pending legislation that will give Mashpee the right to petition for land to be taken into trust. And please tell your congresspeople that this legislation should also be applied to other tribes in Massachusetts and elsewhere where federally recognized after 1934. And those who spoke of National Day or started National Day of Mourning also spoke of terrible racism and poverty. That continues. Some reservations, such as the Navajo, do not even have clean drinking water for thousands of their people. Native youth suicide and school dropouts rate continue to be the highest in the nation. However, Native peoples continue to display resilience in the face of ongoing settler colonial oppression and work hard to ensure to take care of our communities and find solutions to problems that we face. Now more than ever, we all know that racism is alive and well. All of us are struggling under the oppression and capitalist system which forces people to make a bitter choice between heating and eating. And we will continue to gather on this hill until the U.S. military and corporations stop polluting the earth, until we dismantle the brutal apparatus of mass incarceration. We will not stop until the oppression of our two-spirited siblings is a thing of the past. When the homeless have homes. When people from Mexico, Central and South America are no longer demonized and targeted by politicians in search of a scapegoat. When the Palestinians reclaim the homeland and the autonomy Israel has denied them for the past 70 years. When no person goes hungry or is left to die because they have little or no access to quality health care. And when union busting is a thing of the past. Until then, the struggle will continue.
Yeah.
And as we did in 1970, we mourn the loss of millions of our ancestors and the devastation of the land, water, and air. And we condemn all acts of violence and terrorism perpetrated by all governments and organizations against innocent people worldwide. Since the invasion of Columbus and the rest of the Europeans, Native people have been virtually non-stop victims of terrorism. From the colonial period to the 21st century, this has entailed torture, massacres, systematic military occupations, and the forced removals of indigenous peoples from their ancestral homelands. And let us not forget that this country was founded on the idealism or the ideology of white supremacy. The widespread practice of African slavery and a policy of genocide and theft. And let us not forget that under the pipelines, skyscrapers, mines, and the oil rigs lie the interred bones, sacred objects, and villages of our native ancestors. Today, on liberated territory, we will correct the history of a country that continues to glorify butchers such as Christopher Columbus, that makes slave-owning presidents such as Washington and Jefferson into godlike figures, and even carves their faces into the sacred black hills of the Lakota. And on our program will be only Indigenous speakers. This is one day when we speak for ourselves without non-Native people, so-called experts, intervening to interpret and speak for us. Our very presence frees this land from the lies of the history books, the profiteers, and the myth makers. We will remember and honor all of our ancestors in struggle who went before us. We will speak truth to power. We will remember all of our sisters and brothers, Leonard Peltier and Mumia Abu Jamal, who continued to be imprisoned. In 1970, very few people would have given any thought to the fact that the indigenous people of this hemisphere do not look upon the arrival of the European invaders as a reason to give thanks. Today, many thousands stand with us in spirit as we commemorate the 49th National Day of Mourning. In the spirit of Crazy Horse, in the spirit of Metacom, in the spirit of Geronimo, above all, to all people who fight and struggle for real justice, we are not vanishing. We are not conquered. We are as strong as ever. Hope.
Yeah, why don't you guys
Okay, many blessings, you guys. Be sure to share this out to your groups. National Day of Mourning.
go on? Just in case my microphone goes. Okay. I want everybody to stand even closer to each other and hug each other, and that'll help us stay warm. You know, we are here in all kinds of weather, and sometimes it's really hard to be here, but then I think we think of what our ancestors went through, how they were turned out of their homes, their crops burned with no food in the cold. George Washington ordered that to happen. Lots of these settlers ordered that to happen. So I think we can make it through this if we remember that, as long as we are close with each other and feel that love that we have for each other. That will help to keep us warm, okay? So I want to greet all of you who came here from the 4 directions. My mouth is freezing up, so I'm not speaking very well, but I'll do the best I can. We remember our elders who passed into the spirit world this year. We remember our siblings, including brave water protectors, who are in prison and cannot be here with us today. Greetings to those of you who are Nipmuc from the Mashpee and Aquinnah and other bands of the Wampanoag, Narragansett, Massachusetts, Pequot, and the other nations from this immediate region, whether or not they are federally recognized, who had their land stolen for the first time in the 1600s and are facing the possibility of having it restolen now. Welcome to all the Indigenous people who are here from other nations throughout the Americas, and any Indigenous people from Australia, New Zealand, and the other parts of the earth who may be here today. We welcome representatives of our many non-Native allies, including those representing struggles such as the movement for Black Lives, because Black Lives Matter. Those representing Gaza, Haiti, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and many other places. Thank you for being here with us. Many, many communities are mourning tragedies at this time. And thank you to those who have traveled long distances to be with us. And I especially want to honor Marie Runyon, who was an elder who just passed at age 103, who used to make sure that a bus came from Manhattan every year to come here. And also thank Daoud Andre for bringing a bus from Brooklyn. We appreciate that. I read recently that there was a poll that showed that 2/3 of non-natives in this country did not personally know an Indigenous person, and 40% thought we were extinct, which makes me feel kind of like a unicorn, I guess. But we're still here, aren't we? No matter how much they try to erase us, we're certainly not extinct. As we come together in November of 2018, we as Indigenous people face widespread attacks on our bodies, our families, and our land and sovereignty. We cannot separate any of those bodies, our individual bodies, our family bodies, and our tribal bodies, from the land and water and plant and animal life all around us that are also part of our bodies. We are completely interconnected. Some of us who are here today come from families where we were taken away to be put in Indian residential schools, or to be put in foster care, or to be adopted by non-Native families. We understand every day the pain and lifelong ruptures caused by being stolen from our families and often abused as a result. Even if we did not go through this ourselves, we may have family members who were stolen from their communities. Some of us had this happen in our families for multiple generations. We continue to experience intergenerational trauma within our families and tribal communities because of what happened. I raise this because in October, as some of you know, the Indian Child Welfare Act, called ICWA, was declared unconstitutional by a racist federal court in Texas. ICWA was passed back in 1978 to put a halt to all the indigenous kids in the U.S. who were growing up in non-native families without their culture and tribal connections. Before that law was passed, about a third of indigenous children were being removed from their families and adopted into white families. But now there are many forces who want to return us to those destructive times. In addition, thousands of our children are taken from their homes and placed in foster care, which is sometimes referred to as the new residential school, because so many children are unnecessarily being separated from their families. In the U.S. and Canada, Indigenous children have disproportionately high rates of placement in foster care. Whole industries have grown up around adoption and foster care services. Money is being made from our children's wrecked lives. So when the media says that the separation of families by ICE is something new, we are clear that this is not something that just started. It has been happening for centuries to Black and Indigenous families, hasn't it? There are 573 federally recognized tribal nations in the U.S., with many more tribes that are state recognized. I say nations because we are members of distinct nations, many of whom have a nation-to-nation treaty status with the U.S. or Canada. There are also millions of Indigenous people here from Canada, Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and many other countries. The borders between all these countries are not our borders. Many of the refugees whose children are being stolen by ICE right now are Maya families. By and large, Indigenous people here are horrified at the sight of stolen children in cages and carted off to detention centers because we feel so deeply the pain and fear of having our children stolen from us. So when we look at those stolen children and those families who are fleeing their countries that have been destroyed by U.S. policies, we grieve for their suffering too, as they try to survive and keep their families together. I stand here today to demand that these refugees be given asylum by these pilgrim wash-ashores who sit in the U.S. government. And we must demand an end to the theft of all of our children. These attacks are not just on our children. Indigenous women have been under attack since 1492. That has never ended. In modern times, it's estimated that from 1960 through the 1980s, as many as 25 to 50% of Native women in the U.S. were sterilized without their informed consent. This happened in Canada and Peru, other countries too. I am mentioning this today because it is still happening in Canada. Indigenous women there are being coerced into being sterilized in Saskatchewan and other provinces too, with stories coming out about Indigenous mothers being pressured while they are in labor to have their tubes tied, or not being allowed to see their newborn babies until they agree to be sterilized. A huge swath of future generations of our people has never been born as a result of anti-Indigenous public policies. We ask people today to wear something red to say no more stolen sisters, to honor the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. Rosalba has brought a flag with the red cloth to represent our stolen sisters. One of the many reasons that Indigenous nations all over are fighting against pipelines and fracking and mining is that man camps are set up for the workers. The men have huge sums of money and lots of drugs to entice Indigenous women, who often end up being addicted and trafficked. Some of these sisters disappear, some get killed. Missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirits are thought of as a Canadian issue, but it's a big problem in the U.S., Mexico, and other places too. And it happens in cities all over, not just in rural areas. Murder is the third leading cause of death for U.S. Indigenous women. In Canada, several thousand Indigenous women are considered to be missing or murdered. In cities like Winnipeg, Indigenous youth, many of them in foster care, women and two-spirits disappear all the time. In border towns with Mexico, women disappear all the time. Can you just say this? One of the problems in talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirits is that Indigenous women are often uncounted, so that the numbers we have are very incomplete. Some cities, such as Santa Fe, New Mexico, do not even identify Indigenous people separately in their statistics, even though, of course, there's a large Indigenous population in that area. We do not appear in government statistics of many types, whether here in Massachusetts or nationally. Indigenous families who report that their relatives have disappeared are often met by a reluctance from authorities to investigate or file reports. Families are told things like, she'll turn up, she's probably just off getting drunk somewhere. Most of the men who assault and murder Indigenous women are white men. They are often not prosecuted even when they are apprehended, or they are acquitted by all-white juries or given a slap on the wrist. In addition, Indigenous people continue to experience disproportionately high rates of police violence and imprisonment. Unhoused Indigenous people are attacked and killed for fun in places like Albuquerque. The devaluation of the lives and bodies of Indigenous people, the violence against Indigenous women in particular, is deeply intertwined with the contempt that settlers and their systems have for the land. They do not respect our sovereignty as Indigenous nations, and they do not respect the sovereignty of our bodies. Indigenous people are always on the front line of defending the environment because state and federal governments issue permits to corporations that want to engage in destructive, extractive actions on or near our lands. All over the Americas, pipelines, fracking, and mining are being pushed through on Indigenous land without our consent. From Chile to Nova Scotia and Labrador to British Columbia, Indigenous water protectors and land protectors are trying to stop these projects. A lot of you here know about the struggles at Standing Rock to stop the Dakota Access Pipeline, but there have been many more frontline fights, largely led by Indigenous people, against the Keystone XL pipeline, the Bayou Bridge pipeline, the TMT telescope in Hawaii, and more. The resistance has continued in efforts to stop the development of sacred areas such as Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante and the sacred Apache Oak Flat area. In the Yucatan area of Mexico, Maya people are protesting the Maya train project to which they have not given consent. People talk about climate change all the time, but they often feel powerless in the face of government inaction and denial. Being with each other at places like National Day of Mourning is a dress rehearsal for saving the earth. The earth will not be saved with all of these schemes, such as carbon credits or this idea of putting a shield over the earth to block the sun. That's a real thing. Real change is going to come when non-Native people listen to Indigenous voices. So today, we assert our right to care for one another and decolonize our minds, our histories, our languages, and our systems. We assert our right to defend our lives and our families and those of our relatives who have been crossed by the border. And we must defend the right to our lands from Mashpee to the Mapuche territory in Chile. Thank you. Okay. You brought that chair with you? I need to put that chair up there. Okay. Was that talking too fast for the interpretations of that?
Okay, blessings, you guys. Be sure to share this out to your groups. We're in Wampanoag territory during this National Day of Mourning. And we will have all Indigenous speakers today. And yeah, many blessings, you guys. All my relations in the four directions.
Okay. Thank you. I will as soon as I can. Thank you. All right. Thank you for everybody's help. All right. Is Marjorie Flowers nearby? Okay. We have a visitor who's traveled all the way from Labrador. Now, some of you don't know your geography and don't realize where Labrador is. So if you go up the coast from here and you go up Maine and you've got Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia and everything, you keep on going north and keep on going, and then you get to Labrador. It's way far away. And she is from the Labrador Land Protectors, and she is going to be speaking to us today about a mega dam project there that is devastating, and that the Indigenous and other people have opposed there, and that the government and corporations have been pushing through anyway. And I believe that she's even been arrested, as many people have, for their efforts to defend against this Muskrat Falls megadam project. And this megadam project has a local connection to us here in the area. And Marjorie Flowers, who is Inuk, is going to tell us about this. So please welcome her. She's come a very long distance.
Wow. There's more people here than in my province. Well, first of all, I guess I'd like to say thank you very much for the invite onto traditional Wampanoag territory. I hope I got that right. It's a real honor to be here. It was a long trip, and I dread the trip back. But it is certainly worth it, because I do have a message that I'd like to pass on to you as Indigenous people, because I am too Indigenous. I'm an Inuit woman from the north coast of Labrador, which is on the very eastern point of Canada. I'm a beneficiary of the youngest Inuit land claims in Canada, which was just signed off in 2005. Now, the Muskrat Falls project is slightly outside of the claim area, but I grew up in the claim area, and my family's still in the claim area, and will be drastically affected by the negative changes that will happen as a result of this dam. You're going to have to bear with me. I'm not used to speaking to this many people. Yeah, my family is Inuit. My mother is 100% Inuit, and my father is about 30% Inuit. And we talk in percentages because of the recent land claims. Everyone had to prove their ancestry. So that's the numbers relating to my ancestry. Labrador has had and has archaeological proof of Inuit people in this area for the last 6,000 years. And we have faced a lot of the same issues that I just heard talked about here, with the onslaught of John Cabot and the destruction of our land, the rape of the resources, the killing of the people, the killing of the Inuit people. So it's very, very similar to what I hear here. Now, at the same time, I'd like to say that Labrador has 3 distinct Aboriginal groups, one of them being Inuit, which is mostly on the north coast of Labrador, and one of them is Innu, which the Muskrat Falls Dam is being built on their proposed land claim. It's not a settled land claim, but it is in the works. Then we have another southern Inuit group of another southern Inuit Aboriginal group in southern Labrador. So there is a lot of politics around the dam. There's a lot of dissension within groups. It's been a horrible process for that Nalcor Dam, that provincial government, because the Nalcor corporation is a crown corporation of the province. And it's just been one atrocity after another leading up to the building of this mega dam, which will send out 824 megawatts of power, which will come down into Plymouth. And I want to tell you that there are so many things that have happened as a result of this. One of them being when they fill that reservoir to 39 meters high, that will destroy our whole Churchill Valley, and all ecosystems in that will be destroyed. And this is traditional indigenous land where we've hunted and fished and picked berries and lived off that land for thousands of years. We have not been consulted properly. In fact, entire groups of people, the two of the three Aboriginal groups have been totally ignored in this process. So free, prior, and informed consent has not happened. We've been overlooked and ignored and pushed to the wayside, just as I've heard the lady talk about here. And it's very, very, very disturbing. I get really emotional when I talk about it, because it's the home of my people, where we've lived and we've survived. We've survived there. It may be a harsh, cold environment, but it's our home. It's my home. My grandmother lived there. My great grandparents lived there. So it's a really devastating thing that's been happening. The rape and plunder, I don't want to get into a lot of detail about that, but Labrador is a very rich place. It's full of resources. It only has a very small population. We only have about 30,000 people in total in that big geographical area, and most of the population, of course, lives in the southern part of the province around the city of St. John's. So, that's the more urbanized area, and our area is, very few people and very, very much ignored. But we have the resources there. And it started with the fishery. Our cod fishery was completely raped and plundered until there's no codfish anymore, and a moratorium has settled on the place, and we can't fish codfish anymore. And Inuit are sea people. We're not inland people, we're sea people. We depend on the sea. Just as people here, I would assume, in Massachusetts, on the coast of Massachusetts. So there's been so much destruction of the fishery, of the forests. Our forests have been taken out and sold on the island and processed in a I'm losing my words. Anyway, it's processed in pulp and paper mills on the island to service the people there on the island portion of the province. And we have never, ever benefited from that resource. And now the nickel mines are started. There's supposed to be an IBA in place, which is the Impacts and Benefits Agreement, whereby the Aboriginal people are supposed to get first priority. That's overlooked. So we don't, even though everything's pretty on paper, that it's never respected and honored. It's never respected and honored. And this is the same with the Muskrat Falls project. The company has come in. They've, like I said, they've ignored the people. They've ignored our whole groups of people. And I was going to talk about the methyl mercury issue. Sorry. Once the reservoir is completely full at 39 meters, because the province has flatly refused to clear the vegetation and the soil out of that reservoir, there will be a buildup of methyl mercury. And I don't know the mechanics of that process, but I know what effects it has. And it's a neurotoxin that gets into the food chain and accumulates up higher and higher until it reaches me as a person who eats a lot of salmon and seal, will be accumulating 1,500 times more methylmercury than I would normally eat because there is a certain amount of methylmercury that does accumulate in the systems, in the ecosystems, naturally. But there will be an inordinate amount of methylmercury buildup that will cause me to lose my food. I won't be able to eat the traditional food that I've lived on all my life and still continue to live on. And that's an atrocity that our government has ignored completely. In addition to that, the dam has been built on a piece of land that's actually, the foundation is quick clay or marine clay, glacial marine clay is the scientific name for it. And once under pressure of water and movement, it can just flood out. Anybody want to see that? Google the Risa Dam failure on YouTube, and you'll see how that happens. Anybody downstream will automatically go underwater. There's no chance for anybody to be evacuated, and there's no evacuation plan anyway. The government has refused to put an evacuation plan in place. So the lives of our people are in dire danger. Everybody knows that, but the governments, our representatives in the provincial government, at the federal level, they're completely ignoring what we're saying. And we've been struggling for the last 5 years. I've been involved for the last 5 years, but there's other people that have been involved longer. To try to reach the government to ask them to at least do a study of the North Spur to confirm to us and give us a reassurance that this is not going to break. They refuse to do that. And it's because we have on our side the world-renowned expert on quick clay who tells us that it's not if it breaks, it's when it will break. So everybody, and this is the truth. I have friends and relatives who live in the lower valley and in a little place called Mud Lake just outside of Goose Bay that sleep with life jackets under their beds because they're so terrified and they know what's going to happen. Although that reservoir is not completely full yet, it's up at 21 meters right now. But production or operation will start by next year, so that by that time the reservoir will be completely full. And it'll be 41 square kilometers of water on the surface and a complete destruction of the lower Churchill Valley. There's my sign back there, the mega damage sign. And I rarely talk about the financial part of this project because in my mind, the financial part is not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is the threat to my life, our lives, and our culture and our food chain that we've depended on for so long. That's what matters. But the project was slated at $6.5 billion. That was the original estimates. It is now ballooned up to $14 billion to send power out of Labrador. And by the way, Labrador will not benefit from one single light bulb from that project. And that has been said publicly. We are nothing more than rats that they want to extinguish. They'd all be happy if we just packed our bags and left, and then they wouldn't have to worry about people like me bitching and complaining. But I mean, it's a real threat, and it's real life. And I just hope that I made sense, and I do want to thank the Megadam, Northeastern Megadam Coalition, or I think I got that name right, for inviting me down and to hear our message and to pass the message along, because we need people here in the northeastern United States to hear this, because it's real. It's real, and I want to garner as much support as I can from people here to put a stop to this project. Even though it's 95% complete, I still hold my heart that this project can be stopped. one more final thing before I stop, and that is anybody that would like to see, because there's been so much controversy about this dam, financially, environmentally, economically, the whole 9 yards. There is now a Muskrat Falls inquiry happening, and that's where a judge has been commissioned, and 25 lawyers are now on the case to examine, to do a forensic audit of the project. And you can go on muskratfallsinquiry.com, and you'll see what's being exposed. If you want to see corporate greed and collusion and just outright crime, it's criminal what's happening. You can go on there and see what they're doing with regards to the financial piece, with regards to the lack of concern for the people, everything. So once again, I'd like to thank you for listening to me. And I'm freezing too, even though I'm an Eskimo.
It's one person who do it is thank you so much for being here. You're going to come to the social afterwards and everything too. I'm glad. So, you know, when we get up on the hill later, there's going to be literature tables that will be outside there will be literature tables that will be outside and in each of the social halls that will have information about Indigenous Peoples Day campaigns here in Massachusetts, about the Muskrat Falls struggle, about Lakota kids, about other things too. So just so you know, there'll be more information you can get later. Also tonight, if we're still standing, we will post things about the different struggles on the UAINE, United American Indians of New England, Facebook page, so that you can get more information or see what you can do to help. We're going to change. If responsibles can please listen, we're going to change the order of our program a little bit today. What we would like to do is this. Bert Waters is here and is going to read to us a statement from Indigenous political prisoner Leonard Peltier. This is a very important part of National Day of Mourning for us. While he's reading that, some people will be going through the crowd with a red shawl. And we ask you please to make a donation for the Leonard Peltier Defense Committee as they're going through the crowd with the shawl. After we're done with the Peltier statement, I think that we should march. And because I think people need to move, to be honest, a little bit more. So when we're done with the Peltier statement, we're going to march. We'll form up to march, and people will be directed on doing that. And we're going to march down to Plymouth Rock. We'll loop around and march down to Plymouth Rock. It's nice and sunny over there. And for the many of you who are in the shade. And we're going to have some more speeches down there. Okay, so just so you know, we're just mixing it up a little bit so people can get moving sooner rather than later, okay? Everybody doing okay out here? All right, okay. So I want to introduce Bert, who, who's had a difficult year personally, and we're so grateful that he's here with us, and that he comes here every year, and that he reads Leonard's statement for us. Bert is now 88. Good Lord. Bert is now 88 years old. Okay? So I just want you to remember that he and other people in their 80s are standing out here right now. So just have that in mind. All right. And we love Bert so much, and we're so grateful that he's here and that he's bringing words to us today from Leonard Peltier.
Thank you, everyone. November 19, 2018, statement of love and respect from your brother, Leonard Peltier. Greetings, sisters and brothers and elders and friends and supporters. Well, here it is. Sorry to say, another year, and I'm still writing to you from a prison cell. I am still in pain from my illnesses, with no knowledge of whether I will ever get treatments for them. But I'm alive and still breathing, hoping, wishing, praying for not just my pains, but for all Native nations and people of the world who care and have positive feelings about what is happening to our Mother Earth and against the evils committed by Washishu in their greed for her natural resources. It doesn't seem as if any changes for the good or safety of Mother Earth will happen soon. But the good-hearted people are fighting back, and some good people are winning in the struggles to beat back some of this evil and to make the changes, the safety networks we need for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren so that they will be able to live happy, successful lives, at least decent lives, that most of the poor, underprivileged in my generation never got to experience or enjoy in our short lives. So I sit back and look at the world, and I wonder if I will ever get to see the outside world again from this prison cell. At 74, it is not looking too good for that to happen. But I keep my hopes alive and pray as hard as I can that it will happen. If not, when they bury me, I want to be laid to rest face down and with a note pinned to my ass with the words in large bold letters, "Kiss my ass." Just in case someone wants to study my bones years from now. On a more pleasant issue, one of my granddaughters, Ashley, is in college at the University of Arizona, Flagstaff, and she wants to be a medicine woman. How awesome is that? My baby, a doctor. I could be how proud, and how proud am I? You will not believe just how much I am. I could use a little help now and then for her. Don't send it to me, but send it to ILPDC, earmarked for her use only. She is going on a long, hard journey, so she will need help now and then. One day, if she continues her studies to be a medicine woman, I know things can change as time goes by. But if she makes it, she will be an enormous help to Native Nations hospitals. My friend Javi Aden passed yesterday on Saturday, 17 November 2018, 5:20 p.m. He was a very kind and good man who loved Native people and the poor and the sick. We are all going to miss him. I hope he has a good journey to the spirit world, and I hope our relatives will all be there to greet him with open arms, so that would be very pleasing to him. See you soon, Makola. Politically, we are finally making gains in Congress. Two great Native ladies made it in the House of Representatives. They are Sharice Davids Ho-Chunk of Wisconsin For Kansas, Deb Halen, Laguna, New Mexico. On Pine Ridge, my nephew, Julian Bear Runner, made it as president of the great Lakota Nation. I'm hearing more states are doing away with Columbus Day. Hell, we may just win the war of survival yet. My last thoughts on this day that we Native people can call a day of mourning are for my sisters and brothers, family by blood and by aim, that are now in the spirit world. And to them I say, Lila Palaimaya, thank you for your love and work for the people. My thoughts are also with the youth, such as the water protectors and all people young and old who are working to protect Mother Earth. I hope someday in the near future to be with you and part of this march and join you in the feast prepared by Native people and wonderful supporters who have joined together today to honor our ancestors. In the spirit of Crazy Horse, Leonard Pelletier.
Okay. Meet with Tony.
Hey, John.
What do we have over here? Hey, blessings, you guys.
Blessings to you, my friend. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you
How have
guys.
you been? You been well?
Oh yeah. I'm
Good.
freezing right now.
Oh, you don't have a hat. That's
Blessings,
gloves,
brother.
buddy.
gloves too.
I
Gloves
came
and
I came
hats.
ill prepared today. I don't know. I feel like I'm on the line down at Standing Rock again.
No
Freezing
kidding,
my
right?
butt off.
It prepared you for today now.
Yeah, no way it did.
Yeah.
But that was terrific. We had that letter written to us from Leonard Peltier, and he even honored the water protectors, and yeah, that was terrific, huh?
Beautiful.
So,
That man is.
do you want to say a few words about this day of mourning that we're
Day
having
of
today?
mourning.
Yeah.
What I would say off the top of my head is that I feel really honored and privileged to have the knowledge that many people in the world don't have concerning the visibility of Indigenous peoples and their history and struggles in history. But for me, I want to say that the prophecy that many of us look towards, the rise of the Red Nation and people of all races coming together and lifting one another up to save this earth, to save these people, to save us all, gives me so much hope. And that's it for me, because these people are the most beautiful people I've ever seen, I've ever witnessed. Their love for one another, their love for the land, their respect. We could learn so much. So my goal in life is to help bring awareness to many of the struggles and causes, and to help be a voice to non-Native communities, because many still don't know. Thank
Terrific.
you, John.
Thank you for your voice and your presence as always.
It's so nice to
All right.
see you. I was so jealous. The next day after I saw you in Mashpee, you were in New York, and
Yeah.
you were on stage and hobnobbing with,
Indigenous
with
Peoples
Naco
Day?
and
We had a good time.
oh,
Yeah, a lot of good
oh
people
my
there.
gosh!
Donna
If
and
I had known that, John, I would have
Sophia
been
Lansky.
hitching a ride with you. I would have been there in a heartbeat. It was amazing. I watched the whole thing.
All right, I'm going to run to the front of
You've
this.
done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
so
All right.
much.
All right, many blessings, you guys. We're now marching to Plymouth Rock. I'm going to see if I can get to the front of this march. And for those who are just tuning in, we're here at the National Day of Mourning, and we're honoring our Wampanoag family and Indigenous communities all across Turtle Island. They are representing here today. blessings to all my relations in the four directions. It's an extremely cold day today, and I honor and thank everybody who came out today on this National Day of Mourning. It was wonderful to hear that letter from Leonard Peltier, who honored water protectors and our indigenous women who made it into Congress. And it's an honor to share space here in Wampanoag territory. I'll spin this around for you guys. Many blessings, you guys. It's an extremely cold day today on this National Day of Mourning here in Plymouth, Massachusetts. It's an honor to share space with nations representing from all over Turtle Island and the world. As families are gathered together, you know, cutting open turkeys, I think it's a good time for us to remember 526 years of near genocidal extinction, and all that our families went through back in 1620 before and beyond. Oh, the Taino family. All right, so many blessings, you guys. I'm really cold. My fingers are hurting. So I'm gonna shut down this live feed. But honored to share space with so many tribal nations here today in Wampanoag territory, remembering the atrocities which occurred back in the 1620s and earlier, Jamestown and the plague which swept New England from Maine. And yeah, I'm so cold right now I can't even really think. So be sure to share this out to your groups, you guys. Many blessings. Many Wachoni, Lord is life.